Hey guys, this is Torna. Today we are going to be talking about precons that I would avoid until you're a little bit further into Magic, or you've got a little bit more experience. Most of these precons are going to be semi-decent out of the box, but not amazing. I think that's the kind of thing that I'm going for here, is that some of them require significant upgrades, or even then I would end up avoiding them later on. I think that there are better options than some of them. I think that overall you just kind of need a bit more experience in knowing what to kind of replace and stuff like that before you kind of go into any of these precons here. Now, one thing, I'll say a couple things, supple caveats to start with. One is that, most precons, you're going to be able to, make competitive. You're going to need to make some significant changes to some of them. However, most precons, you've got some decent options there. You've also got, some pros and cons from most of them. Like, there's some that are going to be able to give you some decent kind of, staple cards and stuff. You're going to be able to get some nice stuff overall from them. However, overall, the precon's a little bit on the weaker side, or overall it's just one that I would kind of avoid. I want to kind of, just go through each of them, so that way you guys have some ideas on what ones that I would kind of suggest kind of avoiding to start off with. If you want to go into them later on, sure. And then you're looking at some kind of big upgrades, but I'm going to go talk about why I don't appreciate some of them, and what I think would be some good, some good things about each of them, because I don't think there's any precons that are completely dog shit. I think anything 2019 or beforehand, I would look at potentially avoiding, except for the 2017, ones there with the Dragon and stuff like that. Those were decent, well, above decent. They were really, really great. However, it's only been in the last kind of few years that Wizards of the Coast has been making the precons a lot better, putting in some bigger staples in there, some reprints, some better mana base, a little bit better mana base. Like the mana bases overall need some encouragement. However, some of them are worse than others. All right, so I'm going to go through each of them and kind of tell you which ones that I'm not a huge fan of. But before we get into that, first thing is actually do subscribe. My dream is to just become full-time Magic content creator. We're quite a while away from that. I'm currently a content creator in another game. However, I would love to just be able to switch to Magic because I appreciate it a lot. And second thing is that huge shout out and thank you to Jack John Jackson, who's helped me out with this. I'm going to put a link to his story down in the comments. If you guys want to check it out, head on over, check it out. He is a great writer and he would really appreciate you guys going over there. So, the first one we're going to talk about here is the Elven Council. Overall, this precon is based around like voting mechanics, a little bit of elf stuff, a little bit of scry stuff, but voting is like the main mechanic. And overall, voting is just not a great mechanic unless you can force people to vote in certain directions, because people will just always vote for the thing that is better for them, if that makes sense. Like, they're going to vote for the thing that's worse for you. There's some ways to be able to force it, like villainous choice and stuff like that, which are a lot better. However, the voting mechanics in the Elven Council deck are just overall not great. Galadriel, just having a vote as like the main character, I don't think is amazing. There's better, there's other characters in here that are going to be better to be able to kind of be your commander there. But like, I think Elrond of the White Council, I think, is overall a bit better, or even Gandalf, I think, is a bit better than Galadriel as the commander. However, overall, the mechanics and deck overall just kind of suffer from being very centric around this voting system. You need to basically choose one of the mechanics, either the scry mechanic or the elf mechanic, to be able to upgrade it and go heavily into that. And elves have some great stuff. There's some really great elves and really great elf mechanics. Even like Arwen, Weaver of Hope in here has some +1/+1 stuff kind of built in there. So, you've got it's trying to do a little bit of kind of everything. So, overall the mechanic, the deck's kind of just a little bit all over the place. And that's something that you'll notice with a few of the universes beyond decks, is because they try and make it here's a cool thematic deck. Sometimes there's multiple different themes, multiple different kind of directions that they're pulling the deck, that they end up just not working all that great together. So the Elven Council one, if you want to go elves, then there's better precons. if you want to go scry or voting, you can potentially kind of build it off of this, and you can build elves off of this. But overall, I just think that out of all of like the universes beyond precons, it's probably one of the weakest, and definitely out of the universes beyond Lord of the Rings precons. The next one here we've got is the Sliver Swarm deck. So this one here has a freaking awful mana base. This is an awful mana base. So you've got some stuff in here to be able to like search out lands and stuff like that. Like, you know, that you've got 4 different kind of things to kind of search out lands, but then you've only got like, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 basic lands, a lot of kind of like tap lands as well, or stuff that's kind of reliant on you having other stuff already out. You've got like tap sack lands. Overall, I'm just not a huge fan of the mana base here. It's one of the worst mana bases. You've got lots and lots of creatures, lots of slivers, but not necessarily slivers that you kind of want. There's, you know, some key slivers that are going to be missing from it. Even like the artifacts in here really don't go a huge way of kind of helping you out with this mana base as well. Like, you know, you're missing some of the artifacts that give like, you know, 3 different colors of mana or stuff. Like, you know, you've got 5 mana for your commander, but then you've got like, you know, a whole lot of different kind of stuff in here that's going to be a little bit all over the place. So overall, I just think that there are going to, it's also one of the most expensive precons because of the Commander Master ones. They were really expensive, but it's going to be expensive, but then it's also expensive to fix it up, like the mana base, and fix the artifacts, and, you know, change some of the creatures around, get some better slivers in here and stuff. So yeah, it's just somewhere that you kind of need to go from that. The next one here is the Timey Wimey one. Now, I'm going to suggest this one, not great for new players. Definitely not great for new players. You need to kind of have a decent kind of wraparound of the mechanics and stuff like that. But this deck has a kind of significant identity crisis. You know, you've got a whole bunch of like, you know, the timey-wimey stuff where you've got like the exiling cards and putting them in suspend and then time traveling to be able to get them out and stuff. But then you go in here and you got like Astropeth here entering and creating some food tokens. And whenever you sacrifice food and clue tokens, you get explore. So there's like food and clue stuff in here. Like there's just a few different cards in here that just really, are not all that great. There's some really nice reprints in here and stuff, but you just need to significantly kind of change the base part of the deck to be able to improve it and be able to bring the deck up to being, you know, a complete package. You know, there's just like even like Sally Sparrow, for example, you can cast creatures if they had flash, which is great, but she's got a whole bunch of stuff to do with like investigate and stuff. And, you know, there's just a bunch of different stuff in here that's kind of a little bit all over the place. The mana base is pretty good though. I will say that the mana base is pretty good. Like they've done a good job. The universes beyond typically have better mana bases and stuff, but overall there's just a lot of stuff that's kind of missing from the deck, and then a lot of kind of pulling the deck in multiple different directions. Even if you look at like, you know, the commanders and the like all the doctors are basically based around, I think, yeah, all of them are kind of based around the war, the exile and playing from exile and stuff. But then even then they don't match up with, like, say for example, where is she? Martha Jones, for example, whenever she enters the battlefield, investigating and sacrificing clues and stuff. So overall, just not all that great there. Yeah, lots of flavor cards, but they don't really work with the commanders that are in the base game. And yeah, it's just a bit more of a difficult kind of deck to kind of pull off and stuff. All right, we've got the Tinker Time deck. So this one here, the commander is really decent and really interesting from that. There's not really any high value reprints in this deck to start off with. So just, you know, if you're looking to kind of build up a deck, it's not got really great kind of, you know, reprints and stuff. But like, you know, the commander is based around, like the main kind of box commander is based around getting a whole bunch of different artifact tokens out, and then using those on your turn to create big golems, big gremlin artifact creatures. So they need to be differently named artifact tokens. So they did some of that. Like, you know, there's a few in here. There's like, whoops, this one here. So, you know, you've got blood, you've got clue, you've got feather, you've got food, you've got the servo, you've got a few different ones in here, but typically there's only one kind of card that's going to be able to play each of them. And then if that card's not around, then you're missing out on it. So you need to make some pretty decent changes to be able to kind of have and take advantage of building really big golems on your terms. There's also some planner dice stuff in here for like the planes game mode that, you know, you're not really going to use unless you're specifically, you know, taking this deck and then playing it with like the Timey Wimey decks or some other ones that kind of are more focused around plane dice. But even then, you're probably not going to want to have like, you know, this card in here, roll the plane dice as like a artifact when you could have something else. There's not like there's also a green in them. There's green, but there's none of the ramping from green or anything, which is interesting. Like, I don't know, to me, I would want to have some green kind of ramping stuff in here to kind of get you kind of going a bit faster, but there's not really any of that stuff in here, which is just a little bit weird to me. Maybe I'm off with that. Maybe you don't need to specifically have it in there. Like, you know, there's some big high cost stuff in here though, so I would have thought that it would be better to have it in there, but you know, maybe someone can correct me about that. All right. Next up, we've got Painbow. So Painbow has one of the worst mana bases that I've ever really seen. And again, it's got, you know, you've got Cultivate, you've got Explore, Explosive Vegetation, we've got Farseek, we've got Kadama's Reach, we've got Migration Path. We've got a lot of stuff in here. Search for Tomorrow. You've got a lot of stuff in here that is about going and finding basic lands, but then we've got, you know, like 10 basic lands in here. So that means that, like, if you've got your basic lands out because you've used some of these, then you're not going to be able to use any of this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's honestly not great. There's a lot of things in here that are like, you know, 5 cost stuff. The artifacts aren't really helping here, and he doesn't even have a Soul Ring. Like, Soul Ring is one of the like really big kind of key cards in here, but there's no Soul Ring, which is just odd. Like, is this the most recent precon without Soul Ring? Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just really, really weird that there's no Soul Ring in here. There's barely any high value reprints in this deck either. Focused around, you know, multicolored stuff. So like, you know, having multicolored cards in here, but then you don't really have any anything to be able to kind of use from that, which is weird. Like, you don't have like some of the big kind of multicolor key components essentially. There's a lot of cards in here that require 5 colors, like Maelstrom Archangel, Okajaya, Primeval Spawn. You've got the 2-headed Hellkite, Fusion Elemental, Chromatic Core, and Jared himself. There's a lot of stuff in there. Maelstrom Nexus 2, a lot of stuff in here that requires like the full spectrum of colors, but you know, you got to make sure that you have that stuff out then to be able to do it, and the mana base is not going to enable you to be able to do that. And then finally, for some reason, they've got Zakara in here. That is, whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost. I think there's only one other card in here with X in its mana cost, which is, yeah, like, look, Lavalanche there with an X. It's just very odd. Like, and even then, Lavalanche, you're going to cast it once and then it's going to be in your graveyard. I don't know if there's anything in here to kind of bring that back from your graveyard, but yeah, I don't know. It's just another deck with a bit of an identity crisis where they took a whole bunch of multicolored stuff, put it in there, and then be like, hey, this is going to work, right? Without, like, you know, working on like the mana base or the synergies and stuff. All right, next up, we've got the Dungeons of Death one. Now, this one's actually good. This one is good. However, the reason that I've got it in here is because, one, it's focused around a mechanic that's unlikely to see any love in the future. So when a new set comes out, one of the things that I do is I look at this new cards and I'm like, hey, look, my dinosaurs could really use that card. That would be really cool in my dinosaurs. This would be really cool in my Timey Wimey deck. This would be really cool with, you know, my Karlach deck. However, Dungeons isn't really going to be a mechanic that's going to get any expansion in the future. There's also a lot of different stuff kind of going on here. You got to play stuff from your graveyard. You're wanting to kill your own creatures as well. You got a shit ton of card draw in here. There's just a little bit kind of stuff like kind of all over the place. You've got a lot of artifact stuff kind of going on in here. You know, some rolling D4 stuff, creating treasures, and then passing that around. Like, you know, it's just a lot of stuff in here. For some reason, there's slivers as well, like necrotic sliver there, and I think there was one other sliver too. I thought there was one other sliver. Now I gotta check it. I don't know, there's just one random sliver, the necrotic sliver here, that you can sacrifice itself. So it's just kind of a little bit kind of all over the place in regards to kind of what it wants to be doing, which is not necessarily bad. If I was looking at this list, then this is going to be one that I would probably be tempted to get still. It's missing also some core like black and blue kind of cards there. No kind of like, you know, you've got some exile stuff in here, but no way to kind of protect your own stuff. No kind of, yeah, I think that, you know, some kind of, yeah, I think overall it's a decent kind of deck, but then also it's kind of just a little bit all over the place with some kind of fine tuning it down. It could be really great, but it's something that, as a new player, I think that wouldn't be great. And yeah, you've got to kind of keep in mind that there's not going to be much kind of expansion for it in the future. All right, Silverquill. So this one here is interesting. It's going to be all about kind of like group huggy kind of politics and stuff, but that's one issue here, is that if you're a new kind of player, unless you're playing with people that you've already kind of played with before, you don't know what you're going to be kind of dealing with. If you're going down to your LGS and playing with different people each week, you also you don't know what you're going to be dealing with or anything like that. If you've got kind of a set group, then you can kind of, you know, plan it out a bit longer. But this deck is all around like group hugging, politics up, and kind of, you know, that's about it. Like, there's not kind of a big kind of game plan behind it. There's not much way to be able to protect yourself from after you kind of give people stuff. So with, like, say for example, Brianna here chucks out, like, if someone attacks someone else that has more life than the other opponents, then they get to draw a card and you get some +1/+1s, which is a really interesting mechanic. But then once they kind of, you know, draw the cards up, then you don't have a way to kind of be able to kind of take advantage of that, really. You got some enchantments to be able to protect yourself with, like, Ghostly Prison or something, but overall, like, it's going to be kind of more difficult for you to be able to kind of, you know, take advantage of everyone kind of buffing each other up and kind of working together and stuff. So yeah, there's some really nice reprints in here, like Ink Shield, for example. Ink Shield's really nice. I want to get that myself, but I think overall the deck's kind of just a little bit kind of all over the place, a little bit kind of group huggy, and relies on your play group and relies on kind of politics. You could make some really cool decks out of it and kind of expand it around, you know, some protecting yourself, some more kind of stacks and stuff like that. But it's going to kind of struggle to kind of, you know, have kind of that payoff for, like, you know, giving everyone else themselves. All right, we've got the growing threat one here. So this is based around kind of Phyrexian tribal, but Phyrexian tribal is kind of really limited in the deck, especially, and there's more kind of artifact tribal within it. So it's like a mix between, like, Phyrexian and artifact control. Phyrexian and artifact tribal, but more kind of based around the artifact side. But then also, like, if you look at Brimaz, then it's whenever a Phyrexian dies. So you've got kind of like this kind of pulling it in two kind of different directions. The themes kind of synergize, but not really well. So there's, like, +1/+1 counters on your artifact tokens to kind of go wide there, but then you need your Phyrexians to die for Brimaz there. And, you know, it's spread out across a whole bunch of different things between kind of triggers and ETBs. Incubate as well is just not a really great mechanic, not really well supported and stuff. So it's like, you know, and again, you've got like that planar dice kind of stuff in there as well. That's not going to kind of be useful for much kind of later on. So you can obviously take the deck, as with all of these decks, you can take it, you can expand it. You've got some decent kind of reprints in it, like, you know, go for the throat, excise the imperfect is not going to be great with an incubate. But overall, they just kind of, it's a little bit all over the place. And if you want to go Pyrexians, then it's not going to be the best. If you want to go artifacts, then honestly, it's not going to be the best either. If you want to go a mix between the two, then, you know, you could potentially expand it out from that. But then you've also got the incubate stuff. It's not going to be amazing from there. All right, we've got Arm for Battle. So this one here is based around kind of equipment artifact heavy, but there's not really any way to kind of support it. You've got like only 11 creatures in here to start with. So you're kind of, you know, relying on your commander, and then these guys here are all kind of like the support for him, kind of chucking up a whole bunch of stuff onto him. But I don't know, overall, you're kind of just a little bit kind of all over the place. As I said, like only 11 artifacts there. So look at this, 22 instants. 22 instants. But it's in a artifact / aura based deck. So I don't know, this is like really, really odd. 40 lands as well in the base deck is interesting for a 2-color deck. You've got some enchantments in here that aren't going to be too bad, but then you've only got like, you know, 3, like 5 auras. It's 5 auras there. But, you know, and like some artifacts, but these instants are just kind of catching me off guard here. Like 22 instances. That's certainly a choice that they made with it. So overall, like, you know, you kind of reliant really on your main guy, especially with like everyone else kind of being support for him. You got Tiana in here, it's not as bad, but yeah, it's just really kind of all over the place. One benefit of this precon is that it is dirt cheap. There's some decent kind of reprints in here. Like, you know, even like the where was it? The Cicada's Aid there. You've got, what else have we kind of got in here for reprints? There was something else that I was looking at just before. Like, you've got Boros Charm. You got some kind of reprints in here that aren't going to kind of be awful. And, you know, it's a good way to be able to pick it up really cheap, because generally it's pretty cheap because it is not great. And you kind of want to just kind of pull it apart as soon as you kind of get it, because it's not amazing. All right. We got Ruinous Powers here. This one here is just a little bit all over the place. It is decent. Like, it is a good kind of basis, but because of the fact that they went into like the Cascade, and then they went into Demons, and then a bit of spell slinging as well. So there's just a little bit kind of all over the place. It's a good way to kind of start a Demon deck. It's a good way to kind of start a Cascade kind of chaosy deck, but it's a good way to start both of those if you kind of split it apart a little bit. It's got some really great cards that are used in even beyond the kind of, even beyond this deck. Like, you know, the Exalted Flamer of Sazich is used kind of with a lot of different spell slinging decks. The Chaos Defiler as well is pretty decent. There's a little bit kind of all over the place, but overall the deck together kind of just doesn't combine exactly. So you can kind of take it apart and like split it into like the chaos and like the chaos part and then the demons part, but together it just doesn't mesh entirely kind of well together, unfortunately. All right, we got Divine Convocation. So again, this one's going to have your planar dice stuff in here. But there's like a weird kind of mix of synergy. So you're trying to do convoke stuff, but then you're going to be chucking out a whole bunch of tokens to kind of hopefully work with that. But they don't kind of really tie together with that kind of final kind of tying it together. It's just kind of go wide and then hopefully you snowball. But then also, you know, you've got like the planar dice here stuff in it that's just going to kind of fall apart potentially from there. Got a lot of creatures in here compared to the fact that it's going to be creating a lot of different tokens as well. But, you know, with some decent upgrades, and you've got some really good stuff in here, but you just kind of, need that kind of little bit of extra stuff to kind of pull it together, to kind of make it a really great deck that kind of just didn't end up making it into that kind of final area here, unfortunately. I don't think I've missed any so far. Final one here is going to be Zaffai. So Zaffai is interesting. There is a lot of really interesting cards in here, but the issue is getting to be able to cast them. You know, you've got some really high value kind of mana cards in here, like, you know, sorry, like high mana cards in here. Like, you know, you've got like Apex of Power and stuff, but you just aren't going to be able to cast them because there's not enough kind of ramp. There's no like Jeska's Will to be able to give you a whole bunch of mana out or something. There's no kind of way to be able to just overall the mana curve is really bad. Like, look at this is pretty decently bad, considering it's a blue red kind of card deck. You don't have enough to be able to kind of cheat it out, I don't think, to be able to kind of utilize all of that stuff. You can get essentially to the point that you're just not going to be able to play enough stuff here. It's got really good like themes and really good thematics and stuff along those lines, but overall you're just kind of missing that kind of stuff to be able to play these big spells and be able to play these kind of big kind of fun spells like Apex of Power here. Being able to cast stuff and be able to kind of get a whole bunch of cards out at once, and you know, but you've just kind of don't have that stuff to be able to the glue to be able to pull it together to be able to cast these kind of big spells. Now the last one I've got here is going to be a bonus one. I mostly wanted to mention this one, not because it's bad or anything like that, but because it's kind of missing a little bit. But one thing that I will say about this deck, so this is the Draconic Descent one from Battle for Baldur's Gate. People are getting this one, and I've seen a few people kind of look at it and be able to get it because they want to be playing dragons. There is not really, in my opinion, enough kind of this is not really a dragon-y kind of deck. This is a deck built around kind of goading and stuff, with dragons as like a sub theme, but from there you like, for example, for Crag here, whenever dragons you control attack an opponent, go to target creature. So you're kind of working around kind of goading and stuff. This is around kind of goading people into attacking each other, but there's not kind of, you know, stuff to be able to play it as a dragon deck so much as a goad deck. This is a goad deck first and foremost, while not so much a dragon deck. So there's some really cool stuff in here, and I really like this deck. I would kind of, you know, I wouldn't suggest not getting it. I do think it's worth grabbing, but I wouldn't suggest grabbing it thinking that you're going to be able to play a dragon deck so much from it as taking it, making it into like a cool goading deck to make everyone fight each other, and kind of see how it goes from there instead. But that's it for today, guys. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I hope you guys had a great day, and goodbye.